Hello and welcome to this edition of the Halcyon podcast. My name's Rousey and I'm going to be your host for this episode. Thank you very much for joining me. Take a seat, get yourself nice and comfy. We're going to be talking about WWE on just this podcast. There'll be a separate podcast following that discusses other topics. But I thought it might be nice to segment up the podcast to make sure that people are tuning in for one reason or another. If they don't want to tune in for that particular reason, then they don't have to listen to the podcast. And on this one, we go old school. We go back to PWT. Wrestling podcast. Why do I want to do a wrestling podcast? Well, a lot of traction in the mainstream news with regards to something that I am very, very passionate about. So, let's talk about Raw's results, first of all, because what we need to do after Raw's results is we need to talk about the elephant in the room, Crown Jewel, WWE's second foray into the Middle Eastern market, which... yeah, best of luck to him. Anyway, point being, let's talk about Raw. So, from what I saw, unfortunately I can only see tidbits of it. I can't see it live. I don't have Sky Sports and I don't have any BT Sports or anything like that. I tend to watch the highlights and catch the results the day after, obviously all the tidbits that they release on YouTube, which typically speaking is how most people view Raw these days, as far as I'm led to believe, based on the figures that I've seen and based on my conversations with people who enjoy watching wrestling. Decent show though. I like the fact that they're really stringing out the Shield thing. At least here's a big problem I have with the Shield thing. So for people that don't know, who if you're listening to this podcast, you must be into wrestling. But anyway, quick recap. They've been teasing Dean Ambrose splitting up from Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns as the Shield for a while. There's been a lot of talk about Ambrose turning heel, feuding with Rollins for the IC Championship, because of course Roman is going to be going up against someone like Braun Strowman, or a rematch with Lesnar, or another big name that they'll pull out of the hat somewhere down the line. But they've been teasing it for a while, at least a month, in terms of the results of the Greatest Royal Rumble. No, dearing me, it's gone now. Super Showdown. They teased it then, teased it on the Raw prior. That was a couple of Raws ago now, so 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. I don't mind the fact that they're because WWE hate tag teams. The reason for this is because I think that there's much more money in guys being on their own rather than having one big draw. It suits the company more to have multiple draws that are not bigger than the company, which is counterintuitive considering that they bring in people like Goldberg, Lesnar, and Ronda Rousey in an attempt to have these superstars, which they could build on their own if they just let their writing speak for itself. But that's another topic for another time. I want to focus on Raw here. But as far as Raw is concerned, the storyline in this edition focused on animosity between Ambrose and Rollins, with a couple of mistakes from Rollins leading to Ambrose having to take a bump, which he then directly blamed on Rollins. Reigns seems to be painted here as the hero because he keeps saving Ambrose in certain situations, like he took the spear, he speared Braun Strowman through the stand at Super Showdown. He speared him again. I think he speared either McIntyre or Strowman to save Ambrose right at the end of this match. So clearly, again, they're positioning Roman Reigns as a super babyface, which is again another discussion for another time. But I like the fact that this episode it wasn't paid off. I know that which considering the fact that if we go to the card for a second, so Roman Reigns is in the Universal Championship match, so there's not really any incentive for them to tease the heel turn there unless Ambrose inexplicably interferes, which considering it's supposed to be contested in a Hell in a Cell, so yeah, it doesn't really make much sense for him to turn on Reigns there. Unless they're going to tease, unless they bring in a match of some description that allows Ambrose to interfere. One of the things that they're touting a lot on this Crown Jewel, assuming it goes ahead, which we'll touch on in a minute, is the World Cup tournament. Quote unquote, to find out who the best in the world is. So far, you've got John Cena, Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy, Randy Orton, and I believe another one from Raw. I'll have to just double check that. But Kurt Angle won entry into that on last week's Raw by dressing up as a conquistador, and I want to touch on this very, very quickly because I'll come back to the Ambrose and Rollins thing in a second, but Kurt Angle is a legitimate Olympic wrestler. WWE may have mentioned this on a number of occasions. So, and the fact that he's older and he's a statesman now, I get that, but the fact that he's going to be in in-ring competition to a degree, he's doing moves and they're putting gimmicks in the way to make sure that he's not being exposed too much. Like when he was the conquistador, he went out into the ring, to the outside, hung out there and then just did a couple of moves. In the match today, he got someone else to dress up as a conquistador and then he Angle slammed Baron Corbin from behind. I get that, but if they're going to be teasing the match and they're going to be utilising him on a couple of occasions, why not have him as a gruff badass? The roster is dying for a legitimate tough guy. Braun Strowman, for all his strength and for all he's over, he's not a badass. I'm sorry, but when his catchphrase is "get these hands," it's not. It doesn't have the ring as The Rock says, or it doesn't have the same ring as, and that's the bottom line. It doesn't have the same ring as "I am the game." It just lacks a little something. So the fact that, and he's probably the closest I would say that you've got to a badass. You've also got, I guess you've got Drew McIntyre, but I'd say he's still building. He's not a legitimate badass yet. He's tough, and they obviously at the end of this installment of Raw, Claymore kick took Strowman out, which is selling that move like $1 million. I love that shit. But the fact that Angle has all legitimacy in the world, has had a series of matches in the... Forget TNA, I'm not asking you to remember TNA for a second, but within WWE where he was wearing the mouth guard, he was ECW, he was vicious, he was a heel. I'm not saying turn him heel, I'm saying let him build on that mean streak for a second. Let him be the badass. Grow his stubble out a little bit. I hate the fact that he's shinier than shiny. It looks like his head is pumped up to the point where it's going to explode. Let him grow a bit of stubble. Let him wear a proper suit week to week instead of a goddamn... in this episode he wore a Hawaiian shirt and hat. You're killing me here, WWE. He's a hero, a legend, an icon, and that's the best way you can use him, as a gimmicky, happy-go-lucky, oh, I'm so happy to be here. He only worked in that sense when he was a heel, because he would get comeuppance and he would be stupid and people would root against the people that he was stupid against, and they liked laughing at him, not with him. As a heel, he was woeful as a face in terms of being I think even as a face he had to have those big men. As a face, right? Look at his opponents when he was a face. Edge, heel. Eddie Guerrero. You could argue Eddie Guerrero was a heel. Face to the fans, but he lied, cheated, and steal. He was a heel. Brock Lesnar, heel. These are all his best opponents. The exception maybe being Shawn Michaels, but that was a one-off match, and both of them are over as fuck at WrestleMania anyway. They've got too much legitimacy. But the fact that Kurt Angle is being used in this way makes me annoyed. And the fact that the best thing they've got for him at the moment is this World Cup tournament, which I think he'll be fodder for, to be honest. Out of the entrance now, and considering where it is, it's being held in Saudi Arabia, and John's a big match. John is turning up, I'm assuming. Come on, it has to be. It has to be the World Cup tournament as John Cena as a winner, unless they announce someone else that takes the cake in the meantime. I don't know. But coming back to the Ambrose Shield storyline, I like the fact that they teased it a little bit more, and they teased it a little bit more. But it's not obvious to anyone yet when he's going to. I think it's pretty clear cut that Ambrose is going to turn on Rollins at some point. There's a program in there with matches that go back and forth and can be super vicious. There can be some really good promos in there as well. There's a title on the line. It's good. It's gravy. I get it, and I like it. And as well as trying to get Roman over, I think that they're overshadowing... That storyline is overshadowing Roman anyway. It's starting to feel a little bit like Jericho and KO with the title. The title is almost secondary at this point. And the mistake that WWE made, and is still making to this day, is that their titles are secondary. It never feels at the moment like anyone is gunning for the title. It feels like the storylines it just so happens, oh, we'll throw in the title anyway. It just doesn't feel like the titles mean anything at the moment. And this shouldn't be the case. The UFC are learning that right now because they've got title holders left, right, and centre. Interim titles, they're taking titles off people, deciding who's going to be champion, and they wonder why people are only tuning in for the big fights. They're not tuning in for championship bouts. Why? Because no one cares about the championship. They only care about the personalities and they care about the people they follow, and that's it. If you're going to build legitimacy in the belts, which is what WWE keeps saying they're going to keep doing, it's supposed to be the belt, and the belt is the pinnacle, and the Royal Rumble winner gets to... The reason why it's such a big deal is because then they get to go on to WrestleMania to compete for the belt. Well, not really, no. No one really cares about the belt anymore. The fact that the belt in this occasion is going to be contested against 3 people, one of which Roman Reigns has already beaten, having lost to twice in the 2 biggest events of the year. Strowman, who's had a million title shots at this point and has never won, and is sure as fuck ain't going over here. It's going to be Lesnar or Reigns that walks away, and considering Lesnar's still training for this fight potentially in January for the UFC against potentially Cormier, assuming that he comes through his bout now with Derek Lewis, because I don't know if you could make the fight with Lesnar and Lewis if Lewis is champion. I don't think that's a draw there. With Cormier, you could try and still make the fight with Lesnar, I guess, but there's no championship involved, so there's a bit of the luster lost. If Cormier remains champion, great. I think you still got a fight on your hands there, considering the size difference, and considering that will cement Cormier as a fan favorite because he'll be able to beat on Brock Lesnar and make him tap. But at the same time, the fact that Lesnar has got that fight in January almost precludes him from winning this belt. Is Reigns dropping it to Strowman? No. No, he's not. Is Strowman pinning Lesnar? No. No, he's not. So Reigns is winning this match, which means that, the championship it's a formality. AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan for the WWE Championship. Again, I like that match because there's a degree of, I'm not sure, AJ Styles might retain, but Daniel Bryan's got this thing with the Miz, so maybe Miz will interfere, and the same with AJ Styles against his various opponents. Who knows? And it feels like the championship is at the forefront of that match. And I like, and the fact that the 2 contesting it, we all admit, 2 of the hardest workers in the business, 2 of the best performers in the business, 2 great promos, 2 guys who have worked from nothing to the point where they are now. Excellent match. So, we'll see what happens. And again, the thing though is that Daniel Bryan having beaten The Miz in under 2 minutes does mean potentially, yeah, I get that might mean there's more likely to be shenanigans, and I get that there's potentially an injury there with Bryan, but we'll have to wait and see. But it's an infinitely more interesting match than Roman Reigns, Lesnar, and Strowman. So to bring it back to Ambrose and Rollins, the only reason why they're together in the first place is to camouflage Roman Reigns' lack of ability to get over with the fans. As much as they want to point to fucking sales of t-shirts and his popularity at house shows and blah, 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 blah. He's not... The fact that fans are almost apathetically giving... Okay, well, let's give him a chance now. Right, but what has he done? What has he done to get over, apart from be there? Come on now. You mean to tell me that you'd sooner see Roman Reigns in that slot than someone like Elias, who is infinitely more entertaining, has just as good a look, I would argue, and his in-ring quality is just as good? Braun Strowman. Why are you not giving him a run with the title? Oh, because we don't know how to book a big man. We don't know how to book him so that he's a babyface in jeopardy. And we can't book him as a heel because he's not believable as a heel now. He's too over with the fans. Right, but you're putting Lesnar in that Reigns in that position. He's not over with the fans as a babyface. It's just, it's this dichotomy, this double-edged sword of, it has to be Reigns. They've booked themselves into this corner now. It's sad, because Strowman, I would love to take a run with the Universal Championship. I would love that. I would even love Lesnar to win it, to be perfectly honest. I like Lesnar as champion. He brings a legitimacy. I just prefer he defend it on a more regular basis than when he can be asked to turn up. I get that's part of the storyline now, and that he's apathetic towards the WWE, but still, I don't know. But as far as Raw is concerned, again, the fact that they've teased this going... They've teased this going for a while. I like it. And I like the fact that they go back and forth with Seth and Dean, and the way that they're constructing that turn is actually, I want to give WWE credit for something here. That is very, very good. And I'm interested to see what the program looks like, assuming that they make the turn with Ambrose. I'm interested to see what kind of differences Ambrose takes in terms of his personality now that he has a slightly different look. I'm not going to be one of these people that agrees that he's completely different. He's cut his hair short and he's got some traps now. Congratulations. We're all very proud of you. Traps, the easiest body part to work, aside from biceps. congratulations, we're all very proud of you. But the point is, he does have a slightly different look. He does look more Stone Cold Steve Austin-ish, which means he has a degree of brawler legitimacy now that he perhaps didn't have before. I like the look. I like the fact that they're booking him in that situation, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, Seth Rollins wins his bout with McIntyre. Again, the fact that they're booking him so that he doesn't necessarily need Ziggler, but he, utilizes him as well. Good heel tactics. I like it. But the only other thing I really wanted to talk about on this, before we get to the controversy, is D-Generation X versus the Brother of Destruction. Hands up! Every single person who is actually happy to see to see Shawn Michaels back in a WWE ring for this. Bear in mind, and I know what people are going to say before I even say it, the last match, Undertaker versus Triple H, that was billed as one last time. That was the tagline for the match. These two have quote-unquote unfinished business, and this is going to be the last time. Why are they wrestling again, then? Why are they wrestling again? This idea that, oh, well, it's actually a tag match, so it doesn't count. Triple H is wrestling The Undertaker in the same ring. It counts. And you want to say, well, okay, fine. They wanted to set up 2 money-making matches for the price of 1. I get that. But be honest about it. Don't bill it as the last time ever, otherwise you're going to be once-in-a-lifetiming this shit again. And that annoyed me just as much as this annoys me. But what's worse is Shawn Michaels' inclusion. Shawn Michaels ended his wrestling career against The Undertaker. Why isn't he the one at the forefront of this feud? Why is HBK coming out just because Kane's coming out? What sense does that make there? Again, I bring it back to the motivation of the first match. Unfinished business. Triple H and The Undertaker. What unfinished business? Undertaker beat him 3 times at WrestleMania. Seems pretty conclusive to me. As I tweeted out, it was the equivalent of the younger brother beating the older brother, and the older brother saying, no, we're restarting the match. I know, that's exactly what I do. I sure as hell ain't losing the match. I don't care how good you are or how many times you nearly beat me. I'm pressing the reset button on that controller and we're playing again because this controller doesn't work, or you're cheating, you're using a move that you've not shown me, or you've got the settings on a different thing, or I don't like this type of controller. That's the equivalent of what we're seeing here. Only we're meant to buy it as a legitimate match. And the fact that these guys are so past it competitively now. And right, here's how I would ask people to look at this. If you want to say it's not the in-ring quality that should sell you on a match, it's the story. Can they tell a good story? Fine. I'll go along with that. But when the in-ring product falls back on the story, and the story makes no sense, and it comes down to how many zeros they're going to put on a paycheck for me, I'm sorry, I can't get on board with that match. It's a dumb idea. It's going to be a slow-paced match. It's not going to tell any story that's even remotely interesting. But I don't know. Who knows? Who knows how that match will go? But as far as the remainder of Raw, you got the promo last week from the reformation of DX. There's also the explanation of the Bella Twins' turn against Ronda Rousey. It's nice to see that the Bella Twins, or rather Brie Bella's blowback has sort of simmered down a little bit now. That's nice. At least, at least people are starting to calm down a little bit. But hey ho, Ziggler winning the WWE World Cup match. Forgot about that. Yeah, fine. Don't mind. Yeah, Ambrose ain't... I don't know why Ambrose would be annoyed about that match, losing that match, because he'd go into that match, to be crowned the best in the world. The last I checked, that's who the champion is. The champion is the best in the world. So it's either Roman Reigns or AJ Styles right now. You win a tournament, what you get... So what happened to Braun Strowman's title? He won the Greatest Royal Rumble. He didn't get a match after it. He got a little green belt. Do you see it week to week? No, because it's not canon. He won the Money in the Bank. And then they said, oh, you're going to be the monster in the bank. He cashed in, lost. Big deal. This match, crowned the best in the world. At what? the World Cup is going to be a football tournament? Are they going to pick sides, and then whoever wins is a 5-way between those guys, and then they go down to 2, and it's falls count anywhere, or blah blah blah. Anyway, it's a stupid idea. I don't really understand the nature of it. If it's a tournament format, then on even a 3 or 4 hour show, you're not going to have time to do the matches that. And actually, I should say, maybe I should retract that, because you might have time, because the women's division aren't allowed to participate in this pay-per-view. That's something that's being overlooked on this occasion again, and I'm not sure why. Let's just finish off Raw, and then we'll come to those 2 points. But anyway, Finn Balor versus Jinder Mahal. Finn Balor wins. Congratulations, Finn Balor. You're still not really relevant, even though you've got one of the best movesets and gimmicks in the company. God bless you. Feel bad for the way you're booking. Bobby Lashley's push continues against who? Don't know. Trish and Lita make an appearance because they've got another pay-per-view to sell after they get through this one, assuming they get through it. Authors of Pain make an appearance against Kurt Angle. Reference that. Natalya versus Ruby Riott. Natalya wins by DQ. Fair play. And then we've got the Dogs of War. Okay, whatever. I hate that name. Stupid name. Anyway. Show ends. Dolph Ziggler and Dolph Ziggler eats the triple power bomb by the Shield. She'll win. Great. Right. Let's move on to Crown Jewel. 2 things. Number 1, all male pay-per-view. Second, poor journalist murdered in Saudi Arabia. No one, well, or at least that's the theory anyway. No one really sure what's happening. Disappeared. People calling for it to be cancelled based on principle. Right. Okay. So let's break those 2 things down one by one first of all, shall we? So. No women on the card. Why? Because it was the same as the Greatest Royal Rumble. They can't be shown. Number 1, they're not allowed to have not allowed to be exposed. They have to be covered up. And there aren't any women wrestlers beyond perhaps Nia Jax who are not almost completely covered up. Even Stephanie McMahon not allowed to make an appearance. Fucking one of the highest ranking people in the company. Not allowed to make an appearance on the show. What are they going to do about... oh gosh, name escapes me. It's gone. Oh gosh, it's gone. Renee Young, there he is. She is, I should say, sorry. My apologies, Renee Young, you're not he. Sorry, slip of the tongue, Freudian slip. Anyway, Renee Young. Is she allowed to commentate? I don't know. Are they going to be going with a 3-man booth? If so, is Renee Young going to be sitting alongside her Raw counterparts? Is she not allowed to participate? I don't know. The point is, it's just as stupid now as it was then. They've worked hard, I'll give WWE credit, hard over the last 3 or 4 years to legitimize women's wrestling. And in 2 fell swoops, they've undermined everything about it. For enough money, they'll be as misogynistic as you like. Just tell us how much you want us to be misogynistic and we will go along with the program. How many zeros are on that check again? It's ridiculous. It's pathetic. And the fact that it's now being clouded by a substantial media coverage that is focusing on yet another issue that comes out of the... Let's get the facts here, because I don't want to talk out of term. And the fact that it's become so prevalent is concerning. So let's have a look. So Jamal Khashoggi, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He's gone missing in the region. Evidence suspicions that he was killed. So there's a lot of people going backwards and forwards about whether or not he's still alive, if he's been murdered. But it's fair to say that he's become a point of contention on the principle of having this event in Saudi Arabia at this time. Now, what's the counter argument? Well, WWE would say, well, we've already made a pretty big commitment to being there. We've invested a lot of money. We've made promises. It's a contractual nature as well. We've signed to be there for a number of occasions, not just this one. Also, it's not conclusive. No one knows where he is, so it'd be harsh to insinuate anything at this point. We just know that he's not answering his phone right now. Okay. But common sense has to prevail, even though we're only a couple of days away from the event and the possibility of it being cancelled. is becoming less and less likely. I think that the fact that you've got the Women's Evolution pay-per-view immediately after, if I'm not mistaken, I might be wrong on this. Let's just double check, make sure I'm not wrong. I do want to utilize the internet more while I'm podcasting, but the problem is when I'm typing, it sounds like I'm ignoring you, the audience, and I don't want to do that. It's annoying to me, because when people do that on their podcasts, it sounds a little bit disingenuous and a bit fake. But anyway, so, WWE Evolution takes place on October the 28th, 2018. So yes, immediately after. It's almost like they planned it. So, here's my big issue. This pay-per-view is meant to be proof that WWE still values and still puts at the forefront women's wrestling. Really. Charlotte and Becky Lynch have one of the best stories going in WWE right now. Forgetting the fact that they're two of the best wrestlers. They're both tremendously marketable. They both have tremendous appeal. If you want to go, Charlotte Flair is Ric Flair's daughter. You've already got your sell, but then you take into account that she's an ex-gymnast. She trained as a WWE wrestler for years. She's got good heel work. She's got good babyface work. She's very presentable, and she seems perfectly polite. Becky Lynch, slightly different demographic, comes from Ireland, different background, different upbringing. Has a hell of a look, one of the most beautiful women on the roster. But one of the best promos, one of the best work ethics, some of the best moves. And yet, these two probably aren't going to main event this. It's probably going to be Ronda Rousey versus the Bella Twins, or some variation of that. Whoop-de-frickin-do, Ronda Rousey. Someone who's been in the business a year and a half. Now I get the counter-argument, Ronda Rousey's a draw. I can't argue that. Of course I can't argue that. She makes them money. Paying her a lot of goddamn money to make them some money, but they're making some money. The problem with Ronda Rousey, though, is that she stole a gimmick. She's not... Everything has been given to her. Everything has been afforded to her. She's not in any of these situations based on any kind of merit. None whatsoever. She's not great on the mic. Yes, she's got some legitimacy as a wrestler. But have any of her matches been really that good? The double armbar last time. Didn't buy that for a second. Didn't like it. Thought it looked terrible. The match, most people would point to at Mania. Her debut, she did great. Yep. Because she has Triple H planning the match. One of the best in-ring generals of all time. And she had Stephanie McMahon selling for her like a motherfucker. More to the point, if I want to take your point and say that that match is the blueprint for how you should have treated Ronda Rousey from that point onwards, why is she in the women's division? With the greatest of respects, why isn't she competing for the Intercontinental or WWE USA, what's it called? Gosh. United States Championship. Why is she competing for that? Oh, because they're male titles. So, China competed for the Intercontinental. She won a number one contenders match for the WWE Championship. WWF Championship when it was called. So you mean to tell me with someone who has even more legitimacy than China, and arguably a better look, I get that China was bigger and more muscular, but Ronda Rousey's beautiful, and she's going, and you've gone to the trouble of giving her Roddy Rowdy Piper's fucking gimmick, so you might as well get some traction out of it. Why not put her in a position where Dolph Ziggler was a prime opponent? Someone that could work rings around anybody else, can get her through a good match, and is believable to lose against. Give her a run at the title. You don't have to make him lose. And the argument being, well, if he loses to a female, you know, it lessens his stock, and if he beats the female, he looks like a heel. He's already a heel, so who cares? The fact that this pay-per-view even exists, the fact as well, they've given it a name that isn't original. It belongs to a fucking group that they're honouring tonight on SmackDown. It's not an original pay-per-view name. They couldn't have gone through the annals of history to pick out another name that has a different meaning, or at least the same meaning but invokes a different emotion. Evolution, which, by the way, considering they're calling it evolution, okay, this argument, we're constantly evolving, making the product better, making it better. Okay, fine. Why are you excluding women from the previous pay-per-view to this one? We want to make some money. Right, so if someone paid you enough, you get rid of women's wrestling altogether. Is that what you're saying? I know that's not what they're saying, and they'd never admit to that. But the fact that one of the provisos of them going to the Middle East was them saying, we don't want women performing on our pay-per-views. Well, part of our roster, well, main part of our roster, one of the great selling points of our roster is the women's division now. We've got 2 different branches. We're talking about getting a tag team division in there. Great, excellent. I love the idea of a tag team division for women's wrestling because it adds legitimacy to these fucking multi-woman matches that they keep having. At least then you've got something to... The Riot Squad would carry those excellently right now. Think of them like a different kind of the New Day. They can trade the title between competitors so you can get different matches. Interference, great, excellent, love that. But no. Instead, one of the titles is currently in one of the best feuds in the WWE, the other isn't. Because it's playing second fiddle to Ronda Rousey. And again, if you wanted to book her in a position where you actually want to treat women as equals, or at least on par with some competitors in the WWE without making it look stupid, I get you don't want to put Ronda Rousey in there with Brock Lesnar. But again, put her in there with Ziggler. Put her in there against Jinder. People would buy that. I'd buy that. Put her in there against, I wouldn't say Rollins. I'd say that that's probably a step up because of his I don't think Rollins is the same ring general that Triple H is. And I'd also go so far as to say the same with Ziggler. I think Ziggler could carry her to a better match than Rollins can. I think the believability would still be there, considering the size difference isn't really that pronounced. But I think I'd worry about her if she was in the ring with Rollins. Yeah, I'd worry about that. Not with Ziggler, though. Anyway, point being is I'm selling that match until I'm blue in the face. Point being, though, this whole situation is a bad idea. It's born only of the need to try and make some goddamn money. And the way that they're going to justify it is so poor. The fact that we've got... Well, what do you mean? We've got a pay-per-view expressly for women in the next match. Great. Good. Why just the one, then? Why just the one? Can't we have more? Or are you saying that you're only doing this as a trade-off for the fact that we've undermined our entire approach to women's wrestling over the last 3 or 4 years for a bit of money? Because that's what it is. And yes, the controversy surrounding this journalist is bad. The problem is that arguing against that is tricky because there's no definitive answer as to what's happened to him yet. There's a storm cloud over it and there's a lot of political pressure. But I don't argue against listening to that or disregarding it. I understand the argument for both. However, on the principle of the WWE, and in terms of my views that women should be treated equally and should be afforded the same opportunities, the fact that they are being discriminated on one pay-per-view already and about to be another is frankly ridiculous. It's frankly insanity. When you consider, even if you want to get rid of the equality argument for a second, which I'd question, okay, you sound like a nice individual, the wrestling that women have been putting on recently, because they've been given more legitimacy, more airtime, more promos, has been fantastic. It's not as if they haven't delivered. And they have untapped resources in people like Ember Moon and Asuka that they can, when they don't want to fall on the Bella Twins for a bit of hype. Nia Jax still isn't the monster she promised to be. Natalya is still the workhorse that she always has been. Alexa Bliss is a great heel, if not a great wrestler. You have all the ingredients there. So just let them perform. If the Saudi government are that adverse to it, I don't understand what the point is, because it's such a thinly veiled attempt to curry favour with a Western audience and the more progressive audience, while at the same time trying to milk the money from the Saudis. It's laughable. It really is. It's terrible. So I want to end this podcast with this. What do you think, as wrestling fans or indeed as just normal people who I would imagine are like-minded to me? You look at men and women and you think, right, we need to be given the same opportunities. We need to be treated as equal as it is humanly possible to do so. You should not discriminate based on anyone's creed, colour, gender, or anything along those lines. It's content of character and action you judge on. That's it. And if you judge that, and if you want to apply that to wrestling, you judge it on drawing power, you draw it on how well they get over with the fans, and you judge it by the quality of their matches based on how well they're able to get their matches over. You dismissing them from that pay-per-view is you ignoring all of that, because I would argue that they compete with the men on a regular basis as good as any roster as in WWE history. Better than many women's wrestlers in men's history, put it that way. With all due respect to Jacqueline and Ivory and the Cat and Chyna, even Trish Stratus when she started out, Lita, when she started out, they're not the same caliber of athletes that these women wrestlers are. And the fact that you get the mixed match challenge, I get that, but the fact that I'm pretty certain the rule is still if the woman tags the man goes in on the opposite side as well. Doesn't really make much sense to me. Like, just have the mixed match. Imagine the jeopardy you could have in that situation. Imagine Braun Strowman going after someone like Charlotte. Yes, it's horrifying, but it builds tension. And if she can then get to the tag, she can use her superior agility, let's say, and be clever about how she works. You can be clever about that. If you can hide the fact that you can't have Kurt Angle in a legitimate match, you can hide the fact on a regular basis that if Braun were to absolutely smash a woman's wrestler, it would, it looks terrible, looks awful. But that's the point. We're all supposed to feel that way when we see it. It's the reason why they used to do it against, Bubba Ray Dudley used to put women through tables. Because we all sat back and went, what the fuck? You son of a bitch. I can't wait for someone to beat the piss out of you for that. It's why it worked. And WWE have done it in the past and they want to say they're PG and blah, blah, blah. But if you ask me, if you want true equality, you need to start breaking down some of these levels of perception. That women are these delicate little roses that you can't bear to put them in harm's way. We'll let them elbow each other in the face, but we can't possibly put them in the path of a big, strong man wrestler because otherwise they might get hurt. Listen, if you trust their training, you trust their ability to get over with fans, and you trust in the agent's ability to put together matches based on, yes, a bit of perception from the fans, but ultimately the abilities of the competitors, I believe you can tell some amazing stories. Putting women on their own pay-per-view in an attempt to satiate that is a mistake. I love the idea of it. I want to see more of them, but not as a result of them having been demoted from the roster for one pay-per-view. Oh, it's only one pay-per-view and we're making some money and they're getting their own pay-per-view the next week. I don't give a fuck. Why are they not on this pay-per-view? Why are they not part of that payday? Why are they having to go on their own pay-per-view? It's odd. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think I'm being perhaps too sensitive to this subject? Do you agree? Do you think that WWE perhaps shouldn't be holding this event at all, or do you think they should be doing some variation as far as the Evolution pay-per-view? Do you want to see more women's only pay-per-views, or would you like me to see more slightly less ambiguous approach to treating women fairly in wrestling by having them interact in the mixed match challenges more directly with male competitors, allowing their stories to take center stage on a much more regular basis? I don't know of a women's match, for instance, that's main event at SmackDown or Raw in a while. I think the last time that I remember it was Charlotte and Sasha Banks. I might be wrong on that. It's been a while. Again, I don't watch a lot of Raw and SmackDown live, so I had to just take the headlines. So what do you think is, I guess, what I'm saying here. So leave your comments in the description below. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'll be happy to go back and forth with anybody. I'm happy to hear what people think. In the meantime, though, please like, share, and subscribe. Check out some of the other content creators in the description below. Follow me on Twitter. You'll be getting another Blink tomorrow. You'll also be getting episodes every single week, Monday and Wednesday. Depending on what the week is, I'll try and get the information out in advance. If anyone's interested in what's going to be coming up next week in promos, that I'll be releasing shortly as well. You'll be getting another podcast this week as well. This is just a pro wrestling one. I wanted to get out nice and early before the pay-per-view hits at the weekend. So you'll be getting another podcast shortly with regards to sports in general, and then a final podcast potentially at the end of the week about some stuff I want to talk about before I get back into gainful employment. So, in the meantime, please take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you again on the next edition of the Halcyon Podcast.